Howdy, Immortallium here, and today I'm going to be doing my top 10 shoujo manga. Now, shoujo manga, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, essentially means manga aimed at girls aged 12 to 18. Essentially, it's the girl version of shonen. And essentially, the stories are more very detailed and pretty artwork. You know, very emotional stories, quite often involving romance, etc, etc. So with that out of the way, what is my top 10 shoujo manga? Let's start off with number 10, which is Kisses, Sighs, and Cherry Blossom Pink. Now, before I continue on with this, I just need to point out I'm not 100% sure if this is a shoujo. This was actually published in a few Yuri magazines. And, you know, as far as I could tell, all it said with demographic was Yuri. Now, a couple of other sources, not exactly reliable sources, told me it was shoujo as well. So I'm just going off the premise that it's shoujo, but I might be wrong in that. If I am wrong, forgive me. But anyway, Kiss, Sighs, and Cherry Blossom Pink. What is it about? Essentially, it is about these two girls here. And one is called Nana and the other one's called Hitomi, and it's the development of the romantic relationship between them. And that part of the manga is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, it's not nearly as good as Girlfriends. Girlfriends is truly exceptional. The problem that I found with Kisses, Sighs, and Cherry Blossom Pink is that for some reason Milk Morinaga, the author, she felt like as if she needed to expand this high school world that she has created. With a bunch of other short stories, you know, regarding relationships between other girls, that generally last about one chapter. And in general, I found a lot of them very average. I found that they interrupted the flow of the main story. I don't really think they added anything. She kind of attempted to justify it with this little chart near the back of it. Just give me 1 second and I will get you this chart. Here it is. It is essentially a relationship chart, and it's meant to show, you know, how all of the girls who appear in the stories kind of relate to each other. But even so, I found that I think this would be a much, much stronger work if it was simply just the main girls, you know, the main two girls. Because, to be honest, when I was reading those other stories, I was kind of thinking to myself, oh, I just want to go back to the main story. Now, there were a couple of decent standalone stories, don't get me wrong, but I think that they could have been integrated a lot better than just simply, you know, slapping at a chapter, you know, completely standalone. And yeah, so I found that very problematic. And actually, here's the weird thing as well. Milk Morinaga, for some reason, she came back many years later and added more short stories to it. This actually does have all those added short stories. But I was just thinking that's weird. She came back and added more to the weakest part of the manga. So, you know, that I found very disappointing. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still a good manga. Like, I recommend particularly fans of Girlfriends to read this. But I will say that it is definitely the inferior work to Girlfriends and all that jazz. Anyway, after that, at number 9, we have a very popular manga, which was adapted into a probably even more popular anime, and that is Ouran High School Host Club. Now, Ouran High School Host Club essentially follows this girl called Harui. She is a middle-class girl in terms of, you know, family background or whatever, who has gotten a scholarship into this really rich and prestigious school. Now, she's searching for a quiet room to do her study in. She comes across a host club. She accidentally breaks a vase, and she owes them a lot of money. And in order to pay back that money, she has to work as a host in the host club. She essentially has to dress up as a boy, not let anyone else find out that she's a girl, and as you can imagine, comedy hijinks ensue. Now, it is a very, very funny manga. In fact, the actual anime adaptation is my favorite anime comedy of all time, so far at least. But I will say that I actually think that the manga is slightly weaker overall. That's not to say that it's a bad read, of course. The artwork in particular improves over the course. It started out quite mediocre, the artwork, but it improves to the point where it has become quite beautiful by halfway point. And also, the second half of the series is not adapted into the anime. It's a lot more dramatic, and there's some very interesting scenes and relationships that develop in that later part. but I do think that the actual anime is tighter, it's more funny, more consistently funny, at least. And I just prefer the anime overall. But I do recommend that, particularly if you like the anime, that you pick this up. It is a different experience, and you know, all that jazz. So anyway, after that, we have a manga called Hot Gimmick. Now, Hot Gimmick, as you can see, I actually have it in the Visbig editions, which is 3-in-1s, with some beautiful high-quality paper. And essentially the story is that our lead girl, Hatsumi, her sister is a bit promiscuous, I guess is the safest word, and she thinks she's pregnant one day. Hatsumi has to go get a pregnancy testing, and she comes back, she runs into this boy called Ryoki Tachibana. His mom is in charge of you know, the whole apartment complex, and so he actually does kind of have an indirect power to get her kicked out and her family, which of course is very, very bad. So she's like, please don't tell your mom that, you know, I'm bringing home a pregnancy test. And he's like, okay, just be my slave, you know, I want to be able to do sexual things to you and practice and all that, so that when I actually do want to have sex with a girl, that I'm very good at it and all that. As you can imagine, it's quite a tough little read sometimes, and I have heard a lot of controversy about the way that, you know, Ryoki treats Hatsumi and all that. But overall, it is a very good read. There's some very strong artwork in it, and there's some very strong emotional scenes, I will say. Very, very tough sometimes to read, but it is very emotional. It is a very strong work, and I would recommend it definitely. I think when I first reviewed it, though, I overrated it a little, simply because it was unlike something I'd read anything before. Now, though, I hold it in a little less regard. After that, we have The Heart of Thomas. Now, The Heart of Thomas is actually from a Moto Hagio, who is a 49er, or part of the Year 24 group, who were an extremely revolutionary group when it came to actually creating shoujo manga. So to say that this is a classic is an understatement. This is a highly, highly regarded work. And also one of the earliest examples of shonen ai. Now, essentially, the story is that a character called Thomas, he commits suicide near the beginning of the story because his love for a boy called Julie is unrequited. And Julie is, of course, struggling with it. But then comes along another boy called Eric. And Eric is like almost completely identical in terms of appearance to the dead Thomas. And so, of course, it's kind of like as if he's almost facing the ghost of this boy who committed suicide because he wouldn't return his love. And as the story progresses, you know, they become a bit more romantic, is the best way to put it. Just to say that the one thing that really, really annoys me about this series is the fact that so many of the other boys are okay with it. Like, the homosexuality. I mean, this is mid-20th century Germany. And really, like, they make fun, teasingly a bit, of, you know, the boys in just terms of, like, a little bit of name-calling. But it's never, like, aggressive or anything. So it just seems strange to me that boys would be so accepting, particularly of that time period, of other boys pursuing homosexual relationships. But beyond that, you know, there's some incredible emotional stories in this. There's some absolutely amazing artwork. Like, I mean, just Moto Hagio is just absolute masterwoman when it comes to actually, you know, like the detailed artwork, in being able to blend panels together. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And of course, this is released in an absolutely beautiful edition by Fantagraphics. The other thing I guess I should also say is that I'm not too keen on the character Julie, but the rest of the cast is really, really good. Particularly Eric. Eric has a very nice kind of character arc when it comes to development. So I would recommend that you pick up Heart of Thomas. This is a very, very good read. After that, we have... actually, this is the only Osamu Tezuka work that appears in this list. He dabbled not too much into shoujo, really. And to be honest, a lot of his shoujo works are kind of weaker in comparison to some of his other works. But this is an absolute gem, and that is Twin Knights. Now, the Twin Knights is actually a sequel to Princess Knight, even though the Princess Knight that got released in English is actually a remake. So technically, the Princess Knight that we have is actually made later than this Twin Knight. So yeah, that's a bit weird anyway. But essentially, like, I guess I shouldn't give too much of the plot away since it's, you know, a sequel. So I would definitely recommend that you read Princess Knight first. You know, you will get a bit more out of this manga if you have. But overall, I will say that this is absolutely a fantastic little adventure story. There's a lot of, you know, great little artwork in this. Very cartoony, very Disney-esque, but great nevertheless. Some emotional moments, some surprisingly emotional moments, and some absolutely hilarious laughs. Like, I mean, there's in fact, probably my favorite cameo from Tezuka is in this manga. It is absolutely hilarious, that appearance. And a lot of tragedy as well, actually. I remember that one of the villains actually dies quite gruesomely near the end of the story. Surprisingly gruesomely. So, yeah. Overall, definitely recommend it. I will say read Princess Knight first, but this is definitely, in my opinion, the better work. After that, we have Sakura Hemay. Now, Sakura Hemay is from Arina Tanimura. She is one of my favorite manga artists. I absolutely love her art style. And basically, the story of this is, it is a kind of a sequel to, you know, the ancient tale of the bamboo cutter. Our lead character is Sakura. Surprise, surprise. She's a princess. She must marry a man that she does not know, and she's not too keen on marrying, to be honest, although she does kind of develop a bit more emotions for him later. But it turns out that she actually has a bloodline in her that allows her to kill these monsters that are threatening the world, yoku. Obviously a play on the word yokai, which is a type of Japanese demon. And she's the only one who can slay it. But because of her bloodline, a lot of the political people in the kingdom feel threatened by her, and so they feel like they need to finish her off and shouldn't let her marry the prince or whatever. And I would say overall that this is a very, very good read. This is a very actiony for one. Some amazing artwork. Like, this is definitely one of the most gorgeous manga I've ever read. And there's some very, very strong characters as well. There's a couple of moments here and there where the story drags a little. Particularly, I remember there was this kind of battle sequence up a tower, which kind of drags slightly. But overall, I would definitely recommend that people check out Sakura-Hime. It is a very enjoyable read. And after that, we get to a manga called Sand Chronicles. Sand Chronicles, I absolutely loved when I originally read it. It's about a girl called Anne is this one, and she just moved out to the country with her mom. Actually, she moved to, I think, her grandparents on her mom's side. And just to describe her mom as a bit of a depressive is a bit of an understatement. Her mom is so depressed. And she develops a bit of a friendship with some other, you know, kids that are around. But then tragedy strikes, and she must, you know, to continue to struggle on with her life, even while, you know, tragedy is around her. And there's some, as I said, some very emotional, you know, storytelling in this. Some very, very lovely artwork. I will say that the way that the author, Hinako Ashihara, the way that she draws lips is a bit strange. It almost reminds me slightly of the Joker, you know, from Batman. Particularly the Heath Ledger Joker. But even so, the artwork itself is really, really beautiful. And the relationships that she develops with the other characters is very strong. There's some actually amazing little character developments with this other little family. This kind of a rich, kind of traditional Japanese style family. Particularly to do with, you know, lineage. I really like that storyline. And, you know, there's some very strong characters in this. Now, I will say, I'm just trying to recall, was it the last volume or the second last volume? Essentially, either the last or the last two volumes of Sand Chronicles are actually short stories. And while I do think that they do add to the manga, I've heard some criticism from people, you know, saying that they don't really add that much. I think they do add a bit, but I will say that the actual main story that is from Volume 1 to either Volume 8 or Volume 9, I think it was Volume 8 actually, is definitely the better read. But I remember I read the first 3 volumes of this, and then pretty soon after I ordered the other 7 volumes. I really, really do enjoy the series, and I highly recommend that you pick up Chronicles if you have yet to already. After that, we have Captor Sakura. Now, Captor Sakura is... okay, first of all, people might be familiar with Card Captors, which, you know, was a butchered version of the anime of Captor Sakura. Essentially, we have our lead character Sakura, and she recently came across this little being called Kero, I think is the name. Yeah, Kero. And it turns out that she must seal the cloud cards that have been released into the world, and seal it away, or else tragedy will befall the world. And there's some really, really strong characters in it. There's some really, really exceptionally beautiful artwork. I mean, I absolutely love the way that Clamp has drawn this manga. It is absolutely sensational and really, really beautiful. And there's some like absolutely amazing emotional moments. I will say that the ending of this manga actually gave me a lump in my throat just from the sheer emotion of it. I absolutely loved the way that Clamp finished off this manga. It is absolutely fantastic. But there's also some really, really nice stories throughout this. Like, I remember there was one to do with an older man, you know, like a grandfatherly figure. And I just found that, you know, story to be so, so emotional. Not only that, like, there's some absolutely superb characters in this as well. And I just absolutely love the way that they bounce off of each other. So I highly, highly recommend Captor Sakura. And then finally, like, I know you're kind of wondering, like, I bet when I said finally, you're kind of thinking to yourself, hang on, he's only gone through 8 manga, why is he saying finally? This is a top 10, isn't it? Well, the problem is I don't know which one of these is my number 1. I'm gonna have to say that these are tied for the moment. I've actually finished the series, I'm still reading the series. In all likelihood, this will probably edge its way up to number 1, but at this point, they're actually neck and neck. So let me start off with A Devil in Her Love Song, first of all. So A Devil in Her Love Song, essentially, it's about a girl called Maria Kawai, and she has just moved into a new school after being kicked out of her previous school. She is aggressive, and when I say aggressive, I don't mean physically aggressive, I mean verbally aggressive. She knows exactly where to push your buttons to make you angry at her. And for that reason, you know, she's too honest, I guess is the best way to put it, and too frank. And because of that, a lot of people hate her. But there are a couple of guys, a couple of girls who decide to become friends with her and, you know, try to help her to become a bit more social and to, you know, eventually stop getting people to hate her. And there's some very, very... I remember actually the first like volume or 2 is particularly tough due to bullying. There's a lot of severe bullying near the beginning, but I think that adds to a lot to the series. It is an absolutely superb read. What I will say is that I wasn't too keen. Like, Maria, I thought was a lot more interesting near the beginning of the series than she is near the end of the series. I guess the problem there is that her character development requires her to become a bit more normal over the course of the series, but I thought as she became more normal, she became less interesting, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, I would definitely recommend this series, even though it kind of does weaken slightly near the end. It is still a very good read, very strong and very emotional. And then finally, tying, as I said, for number 1 with Devil in Her Love Song is Nana. Now, Nana is essentially the story of 2 Nanas, Nana Komatsu and Nana Osaki. Nana Komatsu is a bit more typically girly than the other one. She has a lot of issues regarding relationships with boys. When I say issues, I mean she has no problem actually getting into relationships. It's more maintaining them that's the issue. And she eventually, you know, gets into, you know, a certain few issues that kind of make her think, okay, I better move to Tokyo to try to sort everything out, get my life back on track, etc., etc. At the same time, there's this kind of a punk rocker girl, Nana Osaki, who she's in, you know, gotten into a couple of troubles with her boyfriend and a couple of her friends, and she decides to move to Tokyo to try to make it big as a musician. And on the way there, they actually end up meeting each other and living together, essentially. This This story is absolutely superb so far. Less romantically focused than some of the other manga here. There's some like really great characters in it. The artwork is very nice, and I absolutely love the relationship, particularly between the two lead characters. They really work well together, and there's just some really strong drama in this. It is probably going to become my favorite shoujo if I continue on reading this. I'm only like 10 volumes in out of 21. The mangaka, it's actually on hiatus from this because I think she broke her wrist or something. So she's unable to draw anymore. She's been in she was in hospital for a year, and now she's back home recovering. So hopefully, eventually, she'll actually be able to get back to the series and continue it on, because it is an absolutely superb work and one that I'd recommend everyone try to get their hands on. So yeah, that's my top 10 shoujo list. I went through that a little faster than the seinen and shonen. Hopefully that isn't a problem. I guess that's just the way that everything worked out. So hopefully, you know, having watched this, you know, you've got a couple of other series, you kind of take yourself, oh, I might give it a try. And, you know, maybe if you, like, aren't into shoujo at all, which I know that there's a couple of people that hang out online who, you know, focus mainly on shonen and seinen and josei, actually, and not much on shoujo. This is a pretty good list, I'd say, to, you know, just give a couple of things a try. So, yeah, that's my top 10 shoujo list. Next up will actually be a top 5 josei list. Why it'll be top 5, I'll explain in that video. But suffice to say, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.